Hey, well, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Collision Live. Daniel joining you as always. And joining me at the desk, the Christopher Robin to my Winnie the Pooh, Mr. Samuel David Camp.
Well, that's a first.
I let you be Christopher Robin instead of Winnie the Pooh. So
Yeah, I could have been Tigger.
yeah, you could have been several things. But hey, guys, appreciate you guys joining us again. Again, if you're new, if you haven't joined us before, this is our weekly show where we break down kind of what's going on in pop culture, any kind of relevant news stories or questions that are important to us as Christians and as the church, and kind of just dialogue with each other and with you guys about how should we approach this? How should we think about this? How should we think kind of critically about it? Yeah, sometimes there's big controversial stories. Other weeks, last week we had Satan shoes, so that was sort of delivered to us on a silver platter for a topic. And then other weeks we just sort of talk about more general stuff. So again, we appreciate you guys joining us. Feel free to share any thoughts, comments, questions in the comment section of the chat, and we'll talk about that with you. But an important day in the life of humanity was 2 days ago. We have Easter Sunday.
Yep.
Obviously an important day for Christians and for non-Christians as well. So kind of jumping off of that, I thought one of the things that we could just sort of talk about is something that maybe we're immersed in it, we're kind of surrounded by it, but we don't necessarily talk about it as much. And that's just sort of the whole idea of kind of these so-called Jesus films.
Yeah.
Again, this is a long-standing Hollywood tradition. Some of the earliest films were kind of Jesus films, telling depicting the life and ministry of Jesus, kind of this biblical stuff. Again, Easter Sunday, a lot of these movies, these old movies, get kind of repurposed as clips in the services. So we, for a lot of us, we're exposed to them that way, even if maybe we haven't necessarily kind of gone down the rabbit hole and watched all of these films. But I don't know. I think there's a lot for us to talk about as far as sort of, there are a lot of Jesus films every year. It seems like there's actually more recently as kind of Christians in the church are getting more involved in cinema. But what's sort of the question I thought we could talk about? Again, we'd love to hear what you guys think as well. Is sort of what is the role of sort of these Jesus films today, kind of for better or worse? But what would you say, sort of general thoughts? What are sort of the maybe a more positive spin? Like what's the role of these kind of films in our culture today?
Yeah. Well, I think on the positive side, one, I just think the Bible in general is pretty rich with stories, and so like any director would be crazy not to try and spin some stories out of the Bible, because some of them are just, especially in the Old Testament, you just can't make up some of the plot twists that happen. But I think specifically for the life of Jesus, I think these films really serve to sort of help people who maybe would otherwise not read the Bible, or just don't really know how to even approach the Gospels. It's just a much more digestible way to kind of see, well, who is Jesus, or who is this what is the gospel? I think it contextualizes some of the gospel and the story of the Gospels. And obviously, like the Jesus film, sort of the OG, I guess, is probably the most translated movie of all time. It's been used just the world around and back again to tell the story of the gospel. And it seems like almost every culture,
and like a lot of the success stories for that. Like there's tons of people that is sort of their entryway into the Gospels, and obviously, we turn to the Bible after we unpack that. But a lot of people confessing and being saved, starting with this film. I think kind of like you're saying too. Like I've traveled to Jerusalem and the Holy Land, and I think in some ways, you kind of get a sense, hey, this is actually like a real, these passages that we read so much. This is real stuff. These are real people.
Well, and who doesn't want to see those stories brought to life? Like I think anybody who's reading, the miracle of Jesus going down to like where the pool of Bethesda, I think it was, and like healing a guy down there, where like everybody's just kind of waiting for the angel to stir the water, and like there's just all these like just really fascinating stories of the life of Christ that you're like, well, who wouldn't want that to like be on screen? And like you'd love to see that take some sort of visual form, and for you to enjoy and just kind of better fill out your concept of some of those stories.
Yeah, and again, maybe that's a segue to kind of thinking critically about what sort of the other side of that, because again, they do fill out. And again, you guys know I'm a huge Tolkien guy, and I've seen the biopic of Tolkien. I just felt the sense that I'm finally kind of getting closer to this man that I've admired and respect. And in a way, the Jesus films kind of do the same thing. Like we really don't have a whole lot of information about Jesus. We have the Gospels and all that they share. Again, they dancing through 3 years or so, or more than that, his whole lifetime and his ministry pretty quick. So these films kind of give us a sense of kind of seeing different angles to Jesus. But what the flip side of that is, and I think maybe the part that we don't kind of as Christians think maybe as critically about as we should, is we are filling out, we tend to think, we're Christians, as long as Jesus is up on the Hollywood screen, then, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
More Jesus is good. We don't need less of that. But the flip side is that I think for a lot of people in our culture, especially a culture that's reading less and less than they did in the past, or maybe even has less kind of cultural respect for the Bible, is that their kind of image of Jesus and their and the Gospels is shaped in a lot of ways by these films.
Yeah.
What do we do with that? Is that always a good thing?
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously that's not always a good thing, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, just how a lot of our theology, let's say about Satan, actually comes more from Paradise Lost than it does from the Bible, just because there's not a lot there. But we have authors who have or even take Dante's Inferno or something, where through the ages we've sort of imagined what it might be like, and it kind of just becomes part of whether we realize it or not, part of our belief or theology about Jesus or any other person in the Bible. And so I think the danger is you're kind of maybe subconsciously giving up your critical thinking to the director and the producers of any given Jesus film to kind of just tell you what was it actually like, even if that's not necessarily like, maybe you don't go into it with that mindset, but you're just sort of, if you're ingesting some of these Jesus films and just kind of fusing that with what you know about Jesus, the danger can be you take some sort of inaccurate bits and pieces along and just kind of meld that in with the actual gospel. And obviously, if you're going to make a movie about Jesus, there's going to be a lot of gaps if you were to try and just be and even just taking dialogue from Scripture, and if that was the only thing you used, you would still be sort of infusing it. The actors would be kind of their interpretation of how would Jesus have said that. There's tone of voice, all these other things that you're just kind of having to, for lack of source material, you're just having to build it out, and so that is going to give you a particular color.
Yeah, and I was going to say it's very much like an interpretation. It's
Yeah.
the filmmaker. Again, that is in a lot of ways unavoidable. I think even just as we read the Bible, we're interpreting it as a preacher is preaching the Bible. They're giving you their interpretation, even if they're just reading Scripture. The way they do the tone of their voice, the way they kind of give life to these characters in the Bible is presenting a certain perspective and viewpoint on the stories that again maybe is different than the plain text. And I think you're saying a lot of these, we always see it with Christmas. A lot of the nativity story. Subconsciously we've a lot of these facts about Christmas we take from culture, from nativity sets and from Christmas films and stuff, which aren't necessarily consistent with the Bible. I don't think they're necessarily harmful or theologically not correct, but some of the details and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's some of the danger I think with these movies is that we're presenting kind of our interpretation in a way, almost like inventing Jesus. Not maybe that's too strong of a word, but we're interpreting it, kind of presenting our own and presenting it to people kind of through our own lens, rather than kind of letting them discover it through kind of God's own revelation through the Bible.
Yeah. Well, and that's just unavoidable if you're gonna tell a story cinematically. Then you're gonna have to kind of put flesh on the bones, regardless. And so I think that would be a very difficult thing, I think, for anybody to try and undertake, especially with Jesus. And obviously, many people have, and whether or not they got it right or wrong, like that's to be debated. But I don't see a way in doing it and not infusing it with your own sort of beliefs and interpretations of how, and because you're almost having, at least I think any Jesus film, you're giving Jesus a personality, which we kind of don't really know too much about his like personality. Like, did he joke around? Like,
yeah, because you see the whole reign. You got like hippie Jesuses and these kind of these revolutionary Jesuses, like the Son of Man movie. You can have real stoic, serious Jesus in some of these films. You have almost like a comedic Jesus, like there's different angles
because there's so little, like virtually nothing about sort of Jesus' personality. You're just left to kind of say, well, what do you think, and kind of go with it from there. And so I think that has the potential to like kind of lead people not necessarily astray, but just have a wrong view of who Jesus is. And so I think there's just things to be aware of if you're going to watch some of these films. Like, just because Jesus is on film doesn't mean it's like.
And I think even outside of them, and we can move on. But even outside of like the theological stuff, I think just sort of other kind of secondary ways that we may not think about. Like, I think a lot of our kind of, at least in America, like our culture of sort of this very kind of feminine, very white-skinned Jesus. Like, a lot of that's coming from paintings, but also film. I think I know The Chosen, the second season just came out, I think, on Easter. They're using all kind of Middle Eastern cast and kind of being more true to the history of Jesus and the disciples, but even the sort of cultural ways that we sort of present Jesus. For a lot of people, you get in their mind, you kind of get this false view, or again, I think there's dangers in it. And I think, I don't think the answer is we just don't need to, get Jesus out of Hollywood.
Yeah.
I think there obviously is value that maybe outweighs it, but I think as Christians, we should be aware of what images are out there and think critically, not just accept it just because, it's Jesus and we support Jesus.
Yeah.
But again, if you guys have any, if you guys are into those films, if you guys got maybe a favorite, we'd love to kind of hear what you guys think about sort of how do we kind of balance the benefits with some of the shortcomings of these so-called Jesus films. Well, another genre of films, a little more less theological, a little more popcorn flicks, is monster movies.
Oh yeah.
We just had Godzilla vs. Kong.
The monster movie to end all.
Yeah,
monster
the battle between two of the biggies, sort of the Superman versus Batman of the monster world. Just came into it's setting record, is the most successful movie since COVID for sure. Again, I reviewed
low bar.
Low bar. But I reviewed that on our website, thecollision.org, and then also I got a video review for that up on our YouTube channel. So I encourage you guys to check that out. But I thought we could just sort of talk about that a bit. Like, why monster movies? It's just like the Jesus films. This is a staple of cinema. Like, we've been making cheap shoestring budget monster films since we started making movies. And some of these are good. Most of them are not as good. But what is it about these films? What kind of is the intrigue for this as people for these sort of, big monsters, kind of, survival? And what is that? What do you think?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, you could probably go all the way back and just say it's biological. Like, there's something in humanity that wants to see itself slaying the dragon. So like you could go all the way back and say, like, this is our biology, its latest iteration. Like, maybe we're not actually slaying dragons these days, but like we can watch movies about other people slaying dragons, and that's really cool. So I think in that sense, there's just sort of an innateness in us wanting to see, humanity slay whatever dragons out there, whether it's Kong or Godzilla, or the smoke monster in Lost, or the alien in Alien, Jaws, maybe one of your favorites there, going out and conquering. I think it's both like sort of the impossible, but also the great unknown. And so I think there's always going to be a draw. Like, I mean, I think that's why there's so many space movies, because it's like the last frontier. And so I think we as humans just love a good sort of adventure, go out there, fight the battle, come back victorious, hopefully.
Yeah, and I kind of think, even as Christians, monster movies aren't necessarily at the top of most people's lists of like, these are the kind of movies Christians should love. Like, as you guys, if you guys have been following the Collision for very long, you guys know, like, I unapologetically love Jaws. I'm wearing a Jaws hoodie. It's my favorite movie of all time. I think it's the best movie ever made. If you've never seen Jaws, then you're living a deprived, lesser life. But again, like these films, and I think sometimes people are like, why that film? Like, what do you get? Why not some of these sort of deeper films, or that wrestle with more theological themes? And I don't know. I think there is, maybe not like the theological part, but there is very kind of human and important themes that come out in these monster flicks. And I think that's kind of what makes a good monster movie, is that kind of the irony of it is, I think what makes a good monster movie is the humanity. Like, it's the pitting, a shark against these three people in Jaws, and kind of unpacking sort of this, who we are as sort of humans. How do we rise above?
What do you do in the face of like great danger? And the greatest danger is some beast or being that's like far superior to you, but through luck and ingenuity, you find a way to tackle it somehow. And so I think that's ultimately what keeps drawing us back.
Yeah, and I think there's sort of a notion that, like, again, this kind of goes back to like the ancient Greeks even, but like to very kind of downplay like the human aspect of our existence. Like, we're only spirit. That's all that matters is spirits. And I don't think as Christians we need to kind of shy away from like the celebrating the human spirit. Like, the best that we can have, kind of rising up as people, like, in the face of, whether it's some big alien or monster or giant atomic breath breathing lizard or whatever kind of monster it is. I think it's, you kind of use these monsters to kind of reflect a mirror back on kind of the best, and then oftentimes the worst that we have is sort of as humans. And I think, again, as Christians, that's a part of our existence.
Yeah.
And
well, and you're tapping into some of those sort of base emotions like fear and anger or whatever. And so I think that's a good thing to kind of tap into from time to time.
Yeah, and that's probably an important, the fear. A lot of these monster movies, they either end up just sort of being like total spectacle popcorn, or else they kind of lean more into like the horror roots. Like, a lot of these monster movies, are, I don't necessarily let my kids watch Jaws or some of those movies yet, maybe soon. But I think, the emotions of it, sort of fear and terror. I think, we've talked about that when we've done reviews and stuff for some of these classic movies, but there's value in that. I think as Christians and just as humans, we tend to live pretty safe lives. We don't experience horror, all that often in our culture today. We might be scared of things, but it's sort of that like dread and, tight stomach kind of horror. I think cinema is sort of one of those places that we can still, it's obviously artificial in a way, but we can still sort of tap that button and feel some of these emotions that, I don't know, that we don't experience just in the workplace or, again, I think that's why, I don't want to give away my verdict in case you go want to check out my reviews, but why I think sort of these monster on monster movies end up not hitting for me is that you kind of take out the humanity. And I don't know, there's this watching monsters, kind of CGI creations or puppets or whatever you have, sort of beating the snot out of each other. I don't think it teaches us or like tells us or makes us feel anything beyond just kind of base level entertainment, diversion.
That's cool.
Yeah,
and then
then you just sort of move on. But yeah, I think we don't need to go into all the different monster movies, but I think it is a genre. I think obviously, like any entertainment, we need to think critically. We need to be careful. There's some of these monster movies are usually kind of loaded, burdened down with a bunch of content that I think Christians need to be careful about. Violence, even sexual stuff, and But I think the genre itself is just an interesting one to sort of explore humanity and kind of these bodies that God gave us. So again, let us know if you guys are watching later. What are your favorite kind of like we were talking before, like Alien, Jaws, Quiet Place was a good recent one. Obviously all these King Kong, Godzilla ones have been coming up. But let us know your favorite monster movie and maybe your least favorite monster movie. And why it's Jaws 4, Jaws the Revenge. But this week at The Collision, I got a couple things coming at you. Encourage you guys to check out, if you guys are like a video only of The Collision, check out thecollision.org. That's our website where we do kind of our written reviews. Again, we got a couple of reviews up there. Nomadland just dropped. Monty wrote that review for us. He's written a lot of great articles for us. We just dropped a new article by Dante, another one of our writers for the website, kind of exploring one of the recent Best Picture nominees and kind of making a case that, hey, this is actually kind of gives us some direction for kind of a future of how to make kind of faith-based Christian films. So again, encourage you guys to check that out as well. And then again, check out our video reviews on the YouTube channel. But cultural observations, again, if you guys are new, so this is where we kind of point out some interesting things. Don't have to go into detail in them, but anything kind of interesting that you see going on in culture?
It was kind of a down week. I feel like I didn't see a ton of interesting things. I did see another trailer for Loki, and I feel like I'm a little more intrigued. I think Owen Wilson seems to play a pretty important role, and I'm a big fan of Owen Wilson, and
as we all should be.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be. It seems like it's going to be kind of a more comedic superhero movie, and not taking itself too seriously. And so I like that approach now to superhero genres. And so I don't know. That seems like it might be kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy because how long ago before
and like Black Widow also had another, which is more of a serious like.
Yeah, it's just like the floodgates are opening for some of that superhero stuff. Like WandaVision seemed like that was just dropping, and now we're like talking about the trailer for the third Marvel show. Like it's.
I know it's pretty.
Can't
ridiculous.
keep up. Again, I'm still stalled out halfway through WandaVision. I haven't checked out the Captain Winter
Marvel Falcon.
Yes, we know we never get that name right. Another trailer that we saw, or that I saw at least, is Space Jam: The New Legacy. Did you see the?
I did not see the trailer for that, but I know it's on the horizon.
Yeah, so Space Jam, again, classic movie. Growing up, this one swap out MJ for LeBron. Not sure about that. I think MJ is probably a better basketball player and a better actor, but we'll see. Again, I think we'll probably get into it when this movie actually kind of comes out. But it's just watching the trailer, I think raises so much like insight into just how much culture has changed since like it's all virtual and like servers and like is this the world that these kids are going into. This is going to be their Space Jam. It really showcases how much has changed in that time.
Yeah.
Kind of another, and we won't get into this too, but I think just today I was sort of following some of this drama. Jordan Peterson, I think you're a fan, not as big of a fan of him, but kind of a conservative commentator. But he was this thing sort of blew up, I think this morning, that one of the recent Marvel comics, Red Skull, who's like the nemesis for Captain America, sort of this Nazi evil figure, that one of the more recent comic books that just dropped kind of took Jordan's sort of philosophies and writing and talks and kind of assigned it all to this evil kind of demonic Nazi character. And again, maybe later if this thing blows up more, we'll talk about it like next week. But I just thought it was an interesting, regardless of what you think of Peterson's work or not, like of just the way that culture can be used, almost like a warfare of ideologies.
Yeah.
And, the comic books it's not just entertainment, but people are using these to try and shape culture and kind of frame the narrative.
It's a term that I think has been overused, but sort of weaponizing. This idea of weaponizing, whether it's speech or whatever, but that definitely seems to fit the bill in this case. Like you're just sort of like weaponizing these ideologies, and packaging it in a way for kids or youth, or I don't know who the target audience of comic books.
Yeah, but if you just sort of like attach this narrative to this kind of pop culture thing, there's entity, then that does shape the way that we kind of think about the real world. And again, I think it's just sort of an example. It's just one of many examples that happens all the time.
Yeah.
But again, that's part of why we do this show. Culture is not just entertainment. It is that, but it's a lot more than that. And I think as Christians, we need to be engaged.
Definitely.
And we hope you guys will be engaged too, and join us next week on the Collision Live. Again, if you haven't done so, we encourage you guys to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. If you're watching us on Facebook, make sure you like our page, kind of keep up with all the posts that we're doing. Like these videos. Join us next week and continue to collide with your world for Christ.